Title: A millionaire entered his stepfather's house and saw his mother crying while cleaning the floor. He left everyone horrified with what he did. The day began like any other for Ethan, a self-made millionaire in his early 30s. Ethan had spent years working his way up, escaping the life of poverty he was born into, and establishing himself in the competitive business world. Despite his financial success, Ethan often felt a void in his life. His mother, Helen, had been his rock during the toughest years, sacrificing everything for him. After his father passed away when Ethan was just a child, Helen remarried a man named Richard, who was nothing like his biological father. Ethan hadn't visited Helen's home in years, knowing his relationship with Richard was strained. But a sudden, unsettling intuition drew him back. The memory of his mother's tearful phone call a few nights prior replayed in his mind. She had insisted everything was fine, but her voice had cracked. When Ethan arrived at the old house, he paused for a moment, preparing himself. The mansion he had bought her looked the same from the outside, but the front door was slightly ajar. His heart sank when he entered and found his mother kneeling on the cold marble floor, scrubbing it, her face tear-streaked and tired. Helen looked up and froze when she saw Ethan. Embarrassment and despair flickered in her eyes. She tried to wipe away her tears, hiding her anguish. "Ethan. I didn't know you were coming," she stammered, her voice barely audible. Seeing his mother on her knees, degrading herself as if she were a servant in her own home, enraged him. Ethan quickly realized the source of her misery, his stepfather, Richard. "Mom, why are you doing this?" Ethan demanded, his voice sharp but tinged with concern. Helen's gaze fell, and she mumbled something about keeping the house clean and how Richard liked it spotless. As Helen tried to change the subject, Richard's loud voice boomed from another room. "Helen! What's taking so long with that floor?" Ethan's fists clenched, and his heart pounded with fury. He could barely contain his anger as Richard walked into the room. He looked surprised to see Ethan and his face turned an ugly shade of red. Well, if it isn't our successful son," Richard sneered. "Back to flaunt your riches, are you?" Ethan ignored the taunt. He stood tall and calmly looked Richard in the eye. "Why is my mother cleaning floors in her own house, Richard?" Helen interrupted, trying to defuse the tension. "Ethan, please, it's fine. Richard just likes things a certain way." But Ethan could see the truth. His mother was a prisoner, bound by the psychological chains of Richard's manipulation. He had never confronted Richard like this before, but years of frustration poured out. "Mom, this isn't fine. You've sacrificed enough for me. I'm not going to stand by while you're treated like this." Helen finally broke down, revealing the depth of her suffering. She told Ethan that after he left to pursue his dreams, Richard had slowly asserted control over her life, taking over the finances and limiting her freedom. Despite living in the mansion Ethan had bought for her, Helen had no authority in her own home. The car Ethan had gifted her was locked away, and she hadn't been allowed to see many friends. Ethan listened, his rage building. "You don't have to live like this, Mom," he whispered, holding her hand. But Helen shook her head. "It's more complicated than you know, Ethan. I thought I was helping you by staying with him, keeping the family together." Ethan spent the night in his childhood room, formulating a plan to expose Richard's cruelty and free his mother. But he knew he had to be smart. Richard was cunning and manipulative, and a direct confrontation wouldn't be enough. Ethan began his revenge quietly. He instructed his financial advisor to investigate Richard's assets and soon discovered that Richard was living off Helen's money. Most of the accounts that once belonged to her were drained, all transferred to Richard's personal accounts. But instead of confronting him directly, Ethan decided to play along. In the days that followed, he acted as if he were planning a family gathering and made sure that several family members would come over. When Richard caught wind of it, he couldn't resist the temptation to boast about his wealth and lavish lifestyle. During the gathering, Ethan gave a short speech about family values and gratitude, emphasizing the role his mother had played in his life. He subtly hinted at his plans to recognize her sacrifices. Richard, sensing an opportunity, chimed in, putting on a facade of a loving husband, praising Helen's dedication to their family. What the guests didn't know was that Ethan had also invited a team of reporters who specialized in uncovering corruption and domestic abuse. As Richard continued his charade, Ethan subtly signaled the reporters, who began recording. Then, without warning, Ethan pulled out documents showing Richard's control over Helen's accounts and the shady transfers he had been making. He exposed Richard's manipulation for everyone to see, turning the gathering into a public shaming. The family watched in shock as Ethan laid out the details. Richard's facade crumbled, his expressions shifting from smugness to terror. The reporters documented every moment, ensuring Richard's actions would be publicly revealed. Helen looked at her son in disbelief, the weight of years of abuse slowly lifting as she saw Richard powerless for the first time. But Ethan wasn't done yet. He had one final move. As Richard tried to leave, Ethan blocked his path. "You're not getting away with this. I'm pressing charges for every penny you stole, and my lawyers will ensure that you repay every cent to my mother." Richard tried to argue, but it was too late. With witnesses, reporters, and documents as evidence, he was trapped. In the weeks that followed, the media coverage of the incident led to a swift investigation. Richard's actions were publicly condemned, and he was charged with financial abuse and embezzlement. For Helen, it was like a new life had begun. She no longer had to clean floors, no longer had to endure the insults and manipulation. She moved in with Ethan, who took her on a long overdue vacation, finally giving her the peace and respect she deserved. Ethan ensured that Helen's finances were restored and set up in her name alone, protected from anyone's reach but hers. For the first time in years, Helen was able to enjoy her life freely, with her son by her side. Though he was victorious, Ethan knew this experience had changed him. He had faced the dark side of human nature, the kind of betrayal that only came from within one's family. But he also learned that resilience and love for his mother were stronger than any obstacle. The tale of Ethan's revenge on his stepfather became a source of inspiration to many, a story of a son's unwavering love and courage, and the relentless pursuit of justice. And from that day forward, Ethan made a vow to always protect the ones he loved. In the end, he had not only freed his mother but also healed a part of himself that had been hurt by years of quiet suffering.